You're listening to a CNA podcast.
Hey, it's Andrea Heng, and welcome back to the Money Talks podcast, where we discuss everything there is to know about your finances. Quick shout out to everyone who has subscribed to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Yay! Thanks for making us a part of your weekly listening. And if you are listening right now and you haven't subscribed, follow us wherever you are getting this podcast from. And that includes YouTube Music. We are there. Now on to the biggest news this week, the Budget 2024 announcement. And here are some key takeaways I thought might be useful for you to digest. First up, more CDC vouchers to spend. If you did spend all your CDC vouchers on the Chinese New Year festive season, then you'll be pleased to know that there's another $300 worth coming your way in June and another $300 in January in 2025. So cheers to more savings. Next, CPF changes. This is a big one, okay? Because if you are 55 years old and above, you want to take note of one, CPF contribution rates will be raised by 1.5 percentage points. Again, this is for those aged 55 to 65. Now, the second thing is, if you are 55 and above, your special account, that's right, that mysterious SA you see on the statement, will be closed from next year. What will happen is that your SA savings will be moved to your retirement accounts, that's your RA, up to the full sum. And then whatever's left behind then be transferred to your ordinary account, OA. So ultimately, you're only left with just two accounts. Now, this is obviously prompting many of us to ask, does that mean that I'll lose the 4.08% interest rate that my SA is giving me? And that was a very big deal for many of us. And we spoke about it on the Money Talks podcast previously as well. In short, yes. But that's also why the government is increasing the amount of money that you can put into your retirement accounts, which, I'm here to remind you, also earns 4.8% interest, by the way. So I wouldn't fret too much if I were you. The next one on my list is that some homeowners will be paying lower property taxes next year. Now, this is because the annual value bands, or the AVBs, for owner-occupied residential properties, they're going to be raised. Okay, so a quick explainer here. A property's annual value is its estimated yearly rent if it were to be leased out. Now, this value is going to be raised, so you'll be paying lower property taxes from 2025 if you are staying in that house. What do you know? It's more savings for you. And I'll just give you a final one that will likely benefit you. A personal income tax rebate of 50% will kick in the year of assessment 2024, but this will be capped at $200 to mainly benefit the middle income workers, especially like myself. For the full list of budget announcements, you need to check out our CNA website, search Budget 2024, and all of our very comprehensive stories and analyses are there. But I'm curious, were the goodies in this budget what you were hoping for? What else did you want to see? Leave a comment on Spotify, or you can just email us if you have the time. It's cnapodcasts@mediacorp.com.sg. I'll be looking out for your views. So we've seen those troubling headlines. Companies laying off hundreds, sometimes thousands of workers in a single blow. Retrenchment is a hard thing to stomach. First, there's the shock of losing a job without any warning, and then the anxiety of no longer having regular income. It's an unenviable position to be in, especially if you're the breadwinner. Sure, there's that age-old advice, even here on Money Talks, that you should always be financially prepared for any emergency, including losing your job. But if you haven't been able to do that, then what are your options? Can you, in fact, survive a retrenchment financially? Well, my next guest promises an action plan that can get you back on your feet and hopefully you can come back stronger. He is Sim Yong Han, a senior financial consultant of Trust Advisors Group at SG Alliance. Thanks for being here, Yong Han.
Thank you for having me, Andrea.
Okay, so as you're getting laid off, right, the biggest and most important part of the conversation with your employer obviously is the payout, right? The retrenchment package.
Definitely.
So it's meant to plug the income loss and keep you financially secure, but this is only for a limited time, right? So first of all, what do I need to look out for in my retrenchment package terms?
So firstly, things to look out for are like the amount that are being compensated. Because for certain companies, they actually have some guidelines. For every year you work in, they give you about 2 weeks worth of salary. So from there, you have a rough gauge how much your package will be and how long can they last you for. Because when you're retrenched, you definitely lose your source of income.
Yeah.
And the retrenchment package is probably the most important thing that will tie you through this period of time as well. So you need to roughly estimate how much the amount is and how long it can last you till before you actually have no money left.
Yeah. Is there any room to negotiate with my employer that retrenchment package? So if I take a look at what they've given me and I feel like, you know what, that's not going to be enough, is there an opportunity here for me to negotiate?
Definitely. No doubt, it is not compulsory for companies to actually give you a retrenchment package based on Employer Act, but it's a norm for them to do so.
Sure.
So if you feel that the terms are unfavorable, of course, you can discuss with them peacefully, or if not, you can engage the union, National Trade Union Congress,
Yep.
and they will actually help you with it as well.
Okay. Once we get that payout, how should we use that money wisely? And you noted this just now also. Is there a way that I can make it last longer than intended, right? Because I want to be able to stretch to the very last dollar because I may not have all of it for that much longer, right?
Yes, definitely. So budgeting is actually the most important step next. But before that, have a talk about the situation with your family members. No doubt it is easier said than done. It's not going to be a simple topic to approach to them, but still sit down with them and actually let them know the situation you are going through, like loss of income, and then what you all can do about it as a family. Because after all, your family is going to be your biggest support and motivation to tie you through this difficult time. So after that, look through your expenses as a family. So then after that, you have to differentiate what are the needs and what are the wants. So some wants are like your yearly holiday or your yearly staycation. Those are actually wants. So when you're retrenched, you will definitely have to put that off.
Yeah.
So as to stretch your dollar to the maximum.
That's true.
Yeah. So when it comes to looking at expenses, this time around, do not lie to yourself anymore and try to convince yourself that maybe your hobby is a need and not a want. So
that's
you
a
have
good
to,
one, yeah. Because people often think that, they hang on to their hobbies because that's kind of like their identifier, right? But
Correct.
when you lose your job and you don't have income anymore to support that hobby, it kind of changes it, right?
Yes, so your lifestyle will change as well. You have to come to terms with that as well. So, and you really have to be real with your expenses. And of course, label them down in all details, definitely.
So you recommend actually recording
Yes,
your expenses.
correct. So, because it's always easy to say that, hey, look, I'm retrenched. I should cut back on my expenses. But what do you mean by cutting back?
Yeah.
By how much are you going to cut back? So then you have to set a goal. So maybe after you write down your expenses, you say that, oh no, my monthly expenses is $3,000. I need to cut back by at least 50%
Okay.
to make my money last. So what are the items that I can cut back on?
Right.
So this is where you have to be detailed about it. You have to list them down, every single one of them down. And again, be real. Those that you don't need, put them off until you have a new job or a stable source of income.
I think that's excellent advice. I've had someone on the show before who told me that she is very insistent on recording every single expense and it helps her make adjustments along the way. Like at a glance what you can cut, what you can reduce and what you can spend more on. So there's another story that I heard. This is quite a drastic measure, I have to say. One guy went home the day he got laid off, spoke to his wife, and then the first thing that he did was immediately cancel his gym and yoga memberships. I guess my question to you is, do I have to be that ruthless when it comes to deciding which expenses to cut the moment I'm retrenched?
Honestly, it really depends on your situation as a whole. If, let's say, for example, you have already set aside money on a daily basis or monthly basis, or you already have sufficient emergency funds,
Right.
which you think will tie you through for at least 6 months to a year, then okay. I mean, definitely you don't have to be that ruthless because I understand that people worked out as a form of distress as well.
That's true.
And when you're retrenched, right, it's actually important to take care of your mental health as well. Because if you're not in the perfect state of mind, you can't make the correct decisions. And you tend to go very depressed and, you will end up not thinking about finding another job.
Yeah.
This actually happens to one of my clients during COVID.
Right.
So she was working in the hotel industry.
Uh-huh.
So during COVID, of course, there were no travelers. We can't travel. Initially, he was put on no pay leave.
Right.
Then subsequently, the company said that they would need to reorganize and restructure. So she did get a severance package, but she has a family to feed as well. He has 2 kids and 1 wife. She didn't take it very well because back then he was already 50 years old.
Oh, wow.
So age is a factor.
Yes.
So for him, he went home. He didn't tell his family members. So, sometimes on TV shows we see that, maybe the father get retrenched, they still dress up and go to work.
Yes.
And he does that. So he does that for
Wow.
about 3 weeks, he told me.
Right.
So he just dress up, go to work, and then he just take the train and then just sit somewhere
Oh, my.
until end of the day he went back home. So this
Right.
went on for 3 weeks until he finally snapped, because usually when you go home, your kids or your wife will ask you, how's work today?
Yes.
How's work been?
Yeah.
You can only lie for that long.
Yeah.
Let's
I
put it
mean,
that
3
way.
weeks is a stretch. I mean, the mere idea of it already is quite unbearable to me.
So then finally he couldn't take it anymore. He broke down and he told his wife that actually he got retrenched. So he don't even know how to tell the kids.
Yeah.
Because they have plans to buy things. The kids actually need a new laptop and stuff, and also some other big ticket items
Yeah.
for school. So all the stress piled up. Then he got no one to talk to. He
Yeah.
bottled it up himself, and by the end of the week, he couldn't take it anymore. He cried in front of the wife.
What was your advice to him?
So after he told the wife about it, actually he's a sole breadwinner.
Right.
So everyone in the family depend on him.
Yes.
So his wife said that, you know what, maybe why not you want to talk to someone? Maybe you want to talk to your advisor about it if you are thinking about, looking through your finances and everything. What I did for him is I asked him to list down all the expenses. But I actually asked him to separate between family expenses and his own personal expenses.
Yes. I think that's very important to distinguish as well, right?
Correct, because the line can get very fuzzy at times.
Yeah.
Then you'll be thinking,
Correct.
example, food.
Yeah.
So
You're
it's-
feeding both the family and yourself.
And yourself.
Yeah.
So does that amount belongs to the family expenses or your expenses?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so from there we can tackle better on what are the areas that we can cut back on.
Okay.
So fortunately he has a family car.
Ah.
So he was thinking of actually selling the car
Right.
and not
Getting some
continuing. Yes,
cash
getting
back.
some cash back. But then I told him that, you know what, since you can't find a job as of now, why not you can explore some part-time gigs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can be a private hire, and also at the same time you can do some food delivery.
Yeah. Right.
And back then during COVID, delivery was a big thing because
Oh, yes.
nobody could get out of their house.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So that actually put money on the table for him
Oh, wow. That's great.
and actually helped him a lot financially as well.
Right. Okay.
So that's one of the ways that actually one can look into
Yeah.
by doing some part-time gig to tell you through.
So you brought up the difference between personal expenses and family expenses. Obviously, if you are single, you're unmarried, or maybe you are married but you don't have kids, or you're not a caregiver, so you really only need to look out for yourself in that sense. It's easier. But when it comes to someone like your client who is a breadwinner, how do you guide him in prioritizing personal expenses and family expenses, which one to cut, which one to retain, and how did you guide him on that road?
Yeah, so after we list down all the expenses, then from there we will see what are the things that would require more urgent attention.
Right.
So for example, because he's still servicing his HDB loan for the flat, so that would be a priority as well.
Yeah.
Then if he's keeping the car, definitely car loan repayment is a priority as well. Then on top of that, we will also look into the pocket money for the kids.
Yeah.
That's actually something that he had to cut back on.
Right.
Yeah, he has to really make the tough decision to cut back on the allowance because, I mean, after all, he loves his kids.
Yeah.
He wants the best for them.
Of course.
But they also understand that, times like this, when Papa got no income, then they will also have to play a part as well.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a very good point here, why you should involve your family, because they need to be able to understand the situation, like you said, not only to empathize, but also, I guess, in a way, contribute to your stress relief as well. Because if they can understand and accept changing financial conditions because of your retrenchment, then that's a huge burden off the shoulders, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it also have additional benefit to the kids in a way that the kids actually are exposed to the word retrenchment a lot younger and how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Because the kids, one is in secondary school, one is in poly. So the one in poly has zero savings prior to his father's retrenchment because,
Right.
they're on like PM scholarship, Papa Mama scholarship. So,
Yeah.
so every time they reach out their hands, hey, Mom, I
Yes.
need this, Dad, I need
Yeah.
this. So then they're handed the money.
I like that you called it Papa Mama scholarship,
Yeah,
PM
so-
scholarship. Yeah. So, and then the retrenchment happened.
Yeah. So they have to really think as well before asking. Like, for example, initially he wanted to ask his dad for a new laptop. It cost about $3,000.
Yeah.
So before he asked, he had to think, should he maybe get a lower spec or alternative, a cheaper laptop? So it actually bring up the thought process for the children as well. And they also realize the importance of having savings for rainy days.
So do they have savings now?
Yes, so they do have.
That's great. I mean, that's the thing, right? That's the other reason you should be sharing it with your family, because it becomes a learning experience for everybody.
Yes, and also cultivate good habits along the way.
Yeah. I mean, it's never ever too late. That's what I believe. So I'm personally trying to get out of a gym membership, and there are plenty of clauses out there, right? There's an early termination fee
Yes.
and all that kind of stuff. So if I get retrenched, how do I assess the financial penalties in these situations?
Yeah, of course, the first step is to look at how much the penalty fee is. If it's just maybe 1-2 months worth of it, then instead of paying for another 2-3 years, yes, of course, it makes more sense to exit
Yeah,
for now.
sure.
But if the amount is too huge, so back then I also understand that some actually gym memberships are transferable. So you can actually approach the gym and maybe look for other potential buyers who would like to
Yeah.
buy the remaining lease from you.
That's an excellent idea. Yeah.
But I don't know whether nowadays they still have this function.
Right,
but
right.
yes, back then they
I
do
mean,
have
it's
this
worth
function.
looking into.
Yes, definitely. And if really, really there's no way to cut back on it, then you have to look at other items to cut back on instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to be too fixated on cutting back on just the gym and yoga membership.
Yeah.
Got to be flexible.
Yeah,
At times
you,
like
you
this.
have to be good. You have to be kind to yourself as well,
Yes.
right? I wanted to talk about adjustments to budget that are sustainable, right? Because we don't know how long we're going to be retrenched for. So there's a very this versus that kind of situation where I need to choose what's a need and want, but within the needs list, there's also choices to be made in terms of cost cutting, right? So, for
Yes.
example, instead of eating at restaurants, you try and cook at home more or eat hawker meals. What kind of adjustments would you recommend that are sustainable? We just agreed we should be
Yes.
kind to ourselves, even though we've gotten retrenched, and we have to watch out for our finances.
So I have a client, she's not retrenched, but I have a client who loves Starbucks.
Oh dear.
I'm not paid to say this.
Oh, yeah.
So she loves Starbucks, so she drinks minimally 1 to 2 cups a day.
Wow.
So that chalks up to a lot of expenses per
Yeah.
month. So if she were to retrench, my advice to her is time to look for alternatives. I mean,
Yes.
coffee is coffee, it works regardless.
If you're in that kind of financial situation, you have to make certain choices that you may not like.
Definitely. Because, I mean, if you were to calculate, for example, a cup of Starbucks will cost you $7.
Yeah.
If you were to drink it for 6 days, it's 42. Then
Wow.
a year, how much would it be?
Yeah.
Compared to maybe say kopitiam coffee, iced coffee, $1.50, $2.
Mm-hmm.
It's $12 per week versus $42 per week.
I mean, it's a no-brainer,
It's
right?
a no-brainer. So yes, that's one of the lifestyle changes that you will really have to adapt to.
So there are other needs as well, like say going to the doctor. The thing that comes to mind is going to the polyclinic versus seeing a private GP, for example. Are these also some of the things that you think we should adjust our budget to? Or do you think that, okay, if it depends on your comfort level when it comes to personal things like medical treatment?
So for medical treatment, of course, different people have different take on it. Some wants the best treatment regardless. Some are just okay with getting normal treatment at not the private hospitals or even the private GPs. So it depends on your personal finances and your preference as well.
Yeah.
But that being said, right, of course, when you're retrenched, you have no income, you can also look into government schemes like the CHAS card.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. So
a lot of people don't
yeah.
know about the CHAS card, I
Yes.
have to say.
Yes, so you'll be surprised the CHAS card have actually subsidies for you as well.
Yeah.
And if you're retrenched at a much older age, you have the Pioneer Merdeka benefits. So look into those government schemes as well.
Yeah.
So they will actually help you quite a bit.
Yeah. So we talked about expenses. Now I wanted to talk about debt. So ongoing debt is obviously something that's going to be a huge financial worry when one gets retrenched. What are my options here? What can I do?
So as for debt management, right, firstly, definitely list them down as well. And you have to list the repayment timeline so as to know that you can actually meet them or not. So for example, like credit card debts.
Yeah.
If you cannot make payment in time, you will incur additional penalty. And also the interest incurred on it is a lot more than what you're going to pay for originally. So you'll be debt on debt.
Yeah.
And that will spiral out of control very quickly. So for that, right, there's this thing called the debt management program,
Right.
which is the debt consolidation plan offered by the banks in Singapore
Right.
to actually help you to combine your unsecured debts into one and reduce the monthly payment.
Right.
So by doing so, you're actually just paying one person instead of all the banks.
Yeah.
So you consolidate under one
Yes.
financial institution and you pay them. And you can also discuss with them how much are you able to pay for per month instead of the original amount.
And they're pretty flexible that way because it depends on what your affordability is, right?
Yes, of course. I mean, face it, I'm very sure they'd rather you pay than end up not paying and keep hounding you for
Yeah,
it. It's
correct.
more of a hassle. So it's a win-win situation for both parties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're not going to run away from it.
Yeah.
You will pay for it, the bank will get back.
Yeah.
So definitely, that's one of the solutions that you can actually look into.
Okay. Okay.
Then on top of that, you can also contact maybe your creditors to inform them of the financial situation and again work out some plan with them.
What about taking a loan, for example? One solution that I've heard of is to take up a loan as part of the debt consolidation process. Do you have any advice or perhaps warnings? Perhaps if we have to resort to a loan to cover our debt? Or is that going to be another debt trap for us?
You see, sometimes when there are too many options for us, we get too comfortable. The same thing comes for taking a loan. You know, some may think that, it's easy to take a loan.
Yeah.
So there's no urgency in finding a source of income. So one thing leads to another, and the next thing you know, you actually owe another debt.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you also have to look at the interest they charge you for the loan. If it's going to be 8, 9, 10%, wow, you end up paying a lot more than the amount that you actually loan for.
Yeah. So we've talked about expenses, we've talked about debt. These aren't the only financial engines that are running in the background. Many of us have investments, insurance plans as well that need regular servicing. Should we be pausing payments, for example? And if I choose to pause these investments and insurance plans, are there potential losses or penalties that I need to be aware of?
Okay, so for this, there's no sweeping answer or sweeping statement that I can provide you.
Sure.
I will actually encourage you to work with an advisor to explore what are the options available for your policies. Namely because some policies, they actually have retrenchment benefit where they actually pay you a small sum of money for a couple of months if you prove that you are retrenched.
Yep.
And for some policies, like investment policies, there's this function called premium holiday where you can actually pause the premium payment.
Indefinitely, right?
Yes, indefinitely, of course. But when you do that, your investment don't go and the charges are still being deducted. So you might end up with a lot less money than you set up initially. Yeah. So then, of course, alternatively, for some, you can actually reduce the sum assured of the policy
Okay.
to actually reduce the premium payment as well. So definitely work with your advisors and run through with them what options are available for your policies
Okay.
so that they can better advise you on it as well.
Okay. So would you then recommend we look for an insurance plan that covers us in the event of a retrenchment? Should that be an item to look at when we are shopping around for an insurance plan?
Actually, to be honest, not all plans have it.
Correct, yeah.
So, but then again, that shouldn't be your main focus. So, for example, if you're actually looking into critical illness plan,
Yes.
of course, your main objective is to be covered for critical illness, not for retrenchment.
Yeah, that's true.
So please do not lose focus on that as well.
Yeah.
So really, really depends on the objective you set up with. So like I mentioned earlier, if you're looking for a critical illness plan, then stick with it. And if it has the retrenchment benefit, it's a bonus.
I think that's good advice. So just the final question here. Everything that we've talked about thus far is about capital outflows, right? They're taking place in the background. We've done what we can to minimize losses when taking a look at our expenses, budgeting, pausing investments and our insurance plans, tackling debt as well. It's now time to think about capital inflows. So off we go to find a new job. If we've been retrenched in a very tight job market, chances are it's going to take a while for us to find a new gig, right? Is this a good time to consider part-time or freelance work? Maybe even go to the job switch reskilling route? You told me earlier about your client using his car to do part-time delivery work, ride-hailing work. Would this be a good time to start thinking about other alternative sources of income while you wait to be re-employed?
I mean, I definitely agree with you. It will take a while before any potential employers actually get back to you on that. So meanwhile, yes, I will encourage you to take up those part-time gigs or even other options that's available. You can be a delivery driver or private hire. If not, actually during COVID, there were a lot of home bakeries that spruce up. Yeah. So you can definitely do so as well. On top of that, you can also take this chance to revisit whether do you really want to stay in the current industry. Maybe you can explore other industry as well.
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity more than,
Correct.
the end of the road, really.
Correct. So for example, my client, he worked in the hotel industry.
Yeah.
He got retrenched. That's not the only industry that's affected, but there are industries that are not affected as well. Like healthcare, nursing, they are not affected. So remember during COVID, we actually hired a lot of people for the vaccination.
Yeah.
They're paid quite well.
Yeah.
And they have those swabbers.
Yeah, the swabbers will pay
Yeah,
quite
they pay
well
quite well too.
Yeah.
So yes, explore more options. Don't have to be really obstinate or stubborn about it and say that no, I want to work in the hotel industry.
Yeah.
I will wait for them to open up. I'll wait for things to get better.
Yeah.
Yes, you can afford to wait, but whether can your family or your wallet afford to wait,
Yeah.
that's a totally different story.
Yeah.
So yes, explore other options. Yeah, I even have clients giving tuition during
Oh,
COVID.
that's an excellent one. Yeah.
So she used to run a private tuition center, but due to safe distancing, the classes have to be a lot smaller.
Yep.
No doubt she wasn't retrenched, but with smaller class size, the income is reduced as well. So then she said, let's bring this online.
Yeah.
So she opened Zoom classes and business got even better.
That's
So,
great.
yeah.
So there is a way to not just survive retrenchment, but you can thrive from it as well, right?
Definitely.
And I think that's the biggest lesson from our conversation here. Thank you, Yonghan, and to you, listener. Thanks for investing your time in this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we would like to hear from you. Leave us a comment or a rating wherever you're listening from. We're streaming on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as YouTube Music. Behind the team at Money Talks is Joanne Chan, Tiffany Ang, Crispina Robert, Saya Wint, and myself, Andrea Heng.